Let's see how many golf jokes we can weave into the conversation.
You forgot who you're talking.
Yeah. We are live. Plus, we have 3 teachers on this call too. So, add that in. We'll be all set. We'll be talking about all sorts of things. Plus, I do have to find out about the viral dog. I'm a dog lover, so I've heard the viral dog story. So
sure. Yeah, well, our black lab has a YouTube video that has over 40 million views the last time I checked.
I think that's fabulous. All right, so we're live.
Jeff, what you need to do, Jeff, is you need to do the video over again, but have him wear a book around his collar.
Right, something like
custom
that.
Dog tag, right?
Yeah. Next time you're on YouTube, type in, search for Dog's Dream Comes True. Dog's Dream Comes True. And look for a black lab with 300 tennis balls. That's our dog.
Awesome. I have to look that up. All right. So we're live. I'm Kristen. I am one of the admins with Bookish Pen Pals, which is a group on Facebook. I also run a website called Keep Reading Kristen because that is my absolute passion. And I'm on all the social media promoting books and my favorite authors on there as well. And I have the immense pleasure of having Robert Dugoni back on. He's been here with us once before, along with his co-authors for Hold Strong. So I'm going to do some big time complimenting here because honestly, I'm in awe of the 3 of you being here. So Robert Dugoni is a New York Times bestselling author of many series, including Tracy Crosswhite, David Sloan, Kira Dugan, Charles Jenkins, and also the author of some of my favorite books, Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell, The World Played Chess, and A Killing on the Hill. And I'm thrilled because we have some teachers as your co-authors. And we're joined by Chris Crabtree, who is a middle school and history literature teacher in Costa Rica, and also with Jeff Langholz, whose work can be found in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, National Geographic, among others. So I hope that my intro has done you justice because I am so incredibly thankful that you're here talking to me about this amazing book. So there's 3 of you. I would love for one of you to decide to give an intro to Hold Strong because I know it just came out. Some of our readers are still waiting for it to come. And I just made it our Fable Group's book for February. So there's a whole bunch of us reading it together in the group as well. So who wants to intro the book?
I would let Chris Crabtree say it, but I'll say this before he says anything. I too am in awe. The amount of research that these 2 gentlemen did on this book is phenomenal. And I'm thrilled that they're getting their accolades they're getting because they did outstanding work to bring this story to the public. So having said that, Chris, take it away.
Well, thanks, Kristen, for having us, for hosting us. This is
welcome.
This is quite a pleasure. But I can just start right at the beginning. There was not a day in my life that I did not know who Father Thomas Cecina was. I grew up on the east side of Indianapolis. I had 3 older brothers. I kind of had the template of how my life was going to go. I was going to go to St. Simon the Apostle elementary school on the east side, the parish that we lived in, and then I was going to go off and spend 4 years in Cecina Memorial High School. And while I knew all this time that I was going to high school named after a legitimate World War II hero, I had no idea how incredible this man's life was. And as I was writing another manuscript that had a protagonist, Catholic priest as a protagonist, I started finding more and more things about Father Tom. And my dear friend Jeff, who I've known since the mid-'80s, we were Peace Corps volunteers together in West Africa back in the mid-'80s. He was down here in Costa Rica, and we were in a bar, and I explained to him this incredible story that I had come across about this this amazing Catholic priest. And when I looked across the table to him, he had an expression on his face and maybe a tinge of green color, was just kind of in shock of what I was telling him. And this is probably the best place for me to pass the baton to him, because I probably should grab a towel and damp the beer off of me that he just spit in my face.
Yeah, thanks for that intro, Chris, and thank you. Let me add my thanks to Kristen as well for hosting us. It's great to meet you, and
thank you.
Great to be with your audience today. You know, when I was down in Costa Rica and Chris told me this story at a bar, I about spit up my beer, and I signaled to the bartender, another round. We're going to be here a while, and he proceeded to tell me the story. I forget how long it took, and my jaw just dropped. And I thought, Chris, the world needs to know this story. And I was a little embarrassed. How did I miss this? I was a history major as an undergraduate. I even took a whole class in World War II history. Nothing about the Japanese prisoner transport ships, these so-called hell ships, at all. I watched every World War II movie you could think of by Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg. And before them, Clint Eastwood and John Wayne. Nothing on this whole forgotten chapter of World War II history. I thought all the great World War II stories had already been told, and in many cases, retold. And then suddenly, my friend is telling me this story. And at that moment, we vowed to try to get the story out. And we started working on it and piecing together the story over several years and writing the manuscript. And one thing led to the next. And then we were very privileged to convince Bob Dugoni to join the team. And maybe at that point, we can hand it off to Bob. Bob, what hole are you on at the golf course right now?
My partner's just teed off. My buddy just hit it about 280. No, but I'm very focused on this. This is important to me, and I'm glad I got to. I'm here. You know, when the story, I met Jeff in the novel writing intensive, which I teach with Stephen James, and I read the first 50 pages, and I said, you know, Jeff, I think you got a really strong story here. If the rest of the book holds together as well, I can probably help you get an agent. And he said, well, we have an agent. And I said, oh, well, who's your agent? He said, Meg Ruley. Meg's been my agent for 35 years. So I said, well, you're in good hands. You're in good hands. And off they went. And I don't know how long it was, but at some point, someone came back to me and said, would you be willing to help them get this project over the finish line? And my initial reaction was no, for two reasons. One was, you know, I'm very busy with my own books. I got a lot on my plate as it is. And two, you know, I felt that these guys, that this was their story. They found it, they mined it, they were putting it together. And I really thought that I wanted, you know, they really needed to do it. And then I think it was Jeff that sort of said, you know, we have the level of the research up here, and we'd like to get the level of the writing to up here. And I jumped in because I felt that this story and the amount of work that these guys did on this book was so absolutely incredible that this story needed to be told, and it needs to be told in schools, colleges, high schools, you know, all over the place. This story needs to be told. And that was really my motivating factor. That and the fact that they're two really good men, and Chris promised to fix my golf swing. So
a little bribery there, right?
Yeah.
What did that research process look like for you, Chris and Jeff? How many years was that? Because there is a lot of research that went into this novel. It's not just a historical love story. There is so many details and many horrific. And I'll be honest, I didn't know all these stories either. And my grandfather was in the Pacific aboard a destroyer, and I had never heard of the hell ships. And, you know, we hear all these battles about World War II, but not this story. So what did that look like for the both of you?
Well, I mean, I'm going to just cover the the scam, I'm going to kind of stick with Father Tom for a minute. We got a little bit of help. I mean, I got a lot of help, as a matter of fact. I mean, here I was at this school that was named after this guy, and so somebody knew his story. And so I started with the Archdiocese of Indianapolis, and Julie Matoika there, the archivist, gave me some pretty limited information, and it's probably not near all of it, but some primary documents and things like that were able to shape that particular character. But
Right.
you know, first of all, how Jeff and I passed information is nothing to set as a model for a collaboration. We were literally, I mean, there are a lot of just passing things back and forth. Have you read this? Did you see this? Look what I found, going back and forth. But you know, Jeff is a research scientist. He's an expert, and he started digging and became super involved in. I dare to say he's probably one of the world's leading experts on the hell ship phenomena in the world, and probably has a collection of books that would rival some libraries. So I think it's best for him to chime in at this point.
Sure. Happy to describe it. Well, over the course of several years, as Chris mentioned, we tried to piece together the story, and we found parts of the story buried deep in archives of various kinds, including the National Archives in Washington, D.C., which had some key pieces of the puzzle, some declassified military documents, intercepted Japanese radio messages and other things, interviewed family members, descendants of some of the people involved, a lot of messages back and forth with those folks and experts around the world. An archivist at the MacArthur Memorial in Virginia also helped provide an important message that was kind of a smoking gun that clarified that the United States knew what was on this particular ship that left Manila on October 11th, 1944. And we just pieced it all together as much as we could and then wrote it up as a story. And in some respects, it's unfortunate that this incredible true story fell in the laps of a couple of rookie authors. It would have been a lot faster and a lot easier if it fell right in Bob's lap from the get-go. This would have been published 5 years ago. But we ran with that baton. Now, just one point on what Chris said. I do have an academic background. I'm a teacher. All three of us are. Bob teaches writing. Chris teaches literature.
Right.
I teach natural resources. And we're all storytellers as teachers and storytellers as authors now. But because I have such a strong academic background, I felt compelled to document all of our sources. It was like I'm doing a doctoral dissertation over again, where if you say something, you have to back it up. And especially in a time of declining trust in institutions, when people have less trust in political institutions and religious ones and business ones and so on, we ran the opposite direction. We're going to be so transparent. Some authors, when they say it's based on a true story or inspired by true events, they don't back it up. We're going to back it up with over 470 endnotes that document the true underlying story chapter by chapter by chapter. So it's very unusual, but we felt compelled to have that transparency.
Did you always know that this would be historical fiction, or at one point did you float that maybe it should be a nonfiction, expository text book? Or did you always have that underlying story where you wanted to have those characters come to life, because they really do?
Jeff and I had the discussion very, very early on that probably the only way that we could reach the numbers that we wanted to reach. We wanted the world to hear this story. It wasn't going to be in a textbook. That we needed to tell a compelling story with compelling characters. And what we found is that with one of the central figures being Father Tom, we found as we followed him through the Philippines and through the Bataan Death March and through the camps and ultimately into the belly of the Arasan Maru, we found out that he was right in the middle of each and every major event of
Yeah.
of the entire theater. And so it made sense to tell the story where we could navigate a reader through all these really, really complicated and heavy events and major decisions that had to be made in order to win a war.
Yeah. And I think one of the major themes that goes through the entire book is resilience, the human spirit, and the courage that he had. And then the main character, Sam, is pulled into that, where he's also fighting to make sure he honors Father Tom as well. So that's portrayed in the characters as well. I mean, it's incredible what the human spirit can do because the conditions are horrific, absolutely horrific. What are some of the surprising things that you found in your research? Was there anything that you were just like, are you kidding?
But
all of it.
all of it. I mean, yeah, it's kind of hard. It's hard to pin one of those things down because just as Jeff said, I mean, even as somebody who thought that they knew a lot about these, the events that surrounded World War II, this was one that just, for obvious reasons, wasn't just shouted from the highest mountaintop. And so, yeah, the entire phenomenon was shocking to me anyway.
And one of the things that shocked me was not just how little known the story is, but just the magnitude of it. This really was the deadliest accident in U.S. military history.
Yeah.
But also the code breaking aspect, which Bob worked on quite a bit with our Sarah character. The code breakers, we had broken the Japanese radio code at that point. And so we were eavesdropping on every message. And every Japanese ship had to report to Tokyo where it is every single day at noon and what it's carrying and where it's going. So we knew all that stuff, which created an interesting dilemma for our submarine commanders and others when we know what's on every ship and where it's going.
Right. And that decision-making process. I was shocked, and I teach my own students about the importance of afterwords and author's notes. I just talked to them this morning actually about it. And I was talking to them about when you're reading a novel such as this, and there's an afterword that is telling you about key events, you have to read it. It is worth looking at all of the reality of these characters because you fall in love with these characters. You want Sam to make it through. You want him and Sarah to get back together because there is this love story intertwined. You want the characters to make it, but you also want to make sure in historical fiction with content this deep that you're portraying it in a way that people understand really how it was. And I was floored at the 40% death toll for the POWs because we don't hear that part of World War II. And I mean, that human spirit to survive through it and how hard that must have been for those code breakers. Like, when do you decide to tell somebody? Do you save them? Do you not? I mean, that part of it was just like, I went back and reread the book in several parts because I was floored by that. I was like, how do you, here's the guy you love, and I don't want to give away spoilers for those listening that haven't read it, but how do you then go to your, senior officer and be like, hey, this is what's happening. What do you do? I can't even imagine the dilemma inside for some of those people. But, the code breaking aspect of it is really interesting because we hear about the Navajo code breakers, but we don't always hear about the women code breakers either. And that's a huge story to tell. And I was talking to Chris at the beginning before we went live that Smith College is not far from me. So as soon as I hit that, I mean, I was sucked in to start with, but as soon as I saw that, I was like, what, is that true? And I was sending my dad that whole story from Smith College because I had no idea, and that's local history for me. So I think there's so many aspects of this book that is going to interest readers, from the World War II part to the code breakers to all of it.
Kristen,
were there? Yeah, go ahead.
You know what? I think that's a really good point. This is not a war book.
Nope.
People should not be afraid of this book because it's a war book. We certainly did not shy away from the atrocities that were committed.
Right.
But really, this is a book that is about faith and hope, and It's a book that I think really, really impresses upon people freedom is not free. That this country has paid a great price to say we are free. And the other thing was what surprised me about the book, really, I've said this before, was Father Tom did not have to be there. He did not have to be on the Bataan Death March. He didn't have to be didn't have to be on the hell ship. As an officer, as a priest, he could have opted out, and he didn't. That's really what the book's about. The book is about the ultimate sacrifice that these men gave for their country and for their fellow men. And that's really what impressed me the most.
Yeah. If I could just piggyback on that theme, this really is a love story, first and foremost. It's romantic love, but it's also love among a brotherhood and a sisterhood type love, that fraternal love. It's love of family members. It's love of country, and it's love of God. It is love, 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 and love. And what I hope readers take from this is I hope they're entertained, informed, and inspired. By entertained, I mean it's a page turner they can't put down. By informed, they learn this new thing they didn't know about World War II. And inspired, back to your point about holding strong and having resilience. We all face challenges in life. And I hope when readers finish this story, they feel they too can persevere against the challenges that life throws their way.
Yeah, I think it's the intertwining theme of love is important because the world that we're in right now, that's really important. That love doesn't have to be that romantic love, that, you can love your friends and definitely love your country and fight for what's right. And that's important for generations. And I think as a teacher, I try to instill that in my kids every day. You have to figure out how to compromise and to support each other and kind of root each other on, especially when things get really hard. That's hard for 9-year-olds because that's who I teach. But even high school kids, they have to learn that as well. That there's sometimes a love that's bigger than just them, in their little world. I love that.
Just one more thought on love. This is probably too much information, but I had my 60th birthday recently, and I did some soul searching. Like, oh, that's a big number. And I started thinking, what's life all about? Why are we here? And I've read a lot of, and what I came to the conclusion after all this soul searching at age 60 was, we are here to love each other. That's it.
Yeah.
And so
I think sometimes we forget. People forget.
And Jeff, definitely. Say 60 is not that old.
Agreed.
Thank you.
I'm with you,
He's
Bob.
not. He's not that old.
It better not be.
I hope not, because I'm almost halfway there. I'll be 54 this year. I think as teachers and being involved with kids and adults that are learning constantly too, it keeps us young, right?
It does.
Yeah, definitely. Were there any parts in the editing process that you had to fight to keep in to the story? Were you asked to remove anything? Was this a 700-page book? Because I would have read it if it was 700 pages.
We did have to. We wrote this book very cinematically, and the Associated Press probably gave us the best review we could ever get because they said this is a very cinematic story and it could easily be adapted to a film. And Jeff and Chris did a fabulous job of creating this character of Sam, who grows up in this small town, Eagle Grove, Minnesota, and he works in a movie theater. He's a projectionist, and he's watching Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, and it's it's a wonderful life, right? That's what it is, and it's a beautiful place. And so when we got to the end, I really felt that the ending needed to be as cinematic as the beginning, that we needed to have that movie that just ripped people's hearts. And we had editors that were saying, no, you need to end the book 20 page earlier, 30 page earlier, you got 2 endings, blah blah blah. And luckily I've been doing this for 30 books, and I had a conversation with Jeff. Jeff, I know what my readers want, and they want a satisfying ending. They don't want to wonder what happens. They want a satisfying ending. We need to have the same cinematic ending as you guys put the cinematic opening of the book. And I'm really glad we did, because readers have really been drawn to the ending, and they really enjoy it. So that was a fight for us.
Nice. I'm glad you kept it too, because I was like, yes, finally. Like it tied everything together, right? One of the things that you have in the afterword, and I really appreciated, was a discussion really about PTSD and mental health. And I would imagine that after a book like this and years of research and really digging in deep with it, that you had to consider your own mental health. Because this is heavy material in a book that, you're writing for mass audience. How do you take care of yourself and separate, have this balance between personal life and not totally getting immersed? Because I know as a reader, when you're reading a book like this and you dig deep, I dream about it. I then think about it constantly. Like I'm asking everybody I know that, was in World War II or whatever subject, because I'm also really into Vietnam history too. And so how do you balance that? Because you've lived in this world for so long.
I'm gonna jump quick, and then I'm gonna pass to my. I think for me, I was very, very fortunate to be, even though Jeff and I weren't in the same country when we were doing it, we were certainly fighting the same battle at the same time. You are correct. It was difficult to go into some of these settings, and Vera could always tell me what setting I was working on at any given time based on my mood. And as tough of a time as I had working through some of the scenes that we were trying to write, I was trying also to support Jeff as he was becoming increasingly consumed by the events and everything. And I get a little choked up every time I think about it, so I'm going to let him get choked up instead.
Yeah. Well, Kristen, thanks for that question, because to tell you the truth, there are a lot of reasons why these hellship stories have not been told. It's because they're really hard to tell and hard to hear. People don't want to go there, because when you go there, you pay a price. And we felt compelled to try to portray what it was really like. And that was all consuming in many respects. And I'm not proud to say I did lose myself for a while. I became obsessed with this and suffered some physical, emotional price for that. And we did convey pretty graphically what happened. And then fortunately, Chris and I have handlers like Bob and our agent and our publisher. They've been in the industry for decades, and they're like, oh, we're not putting that in the story. Our readers are going to throw the book away and never come back. And so we did remove a lot of that really difficult stuff because the experts really suggested correctly we should.
Right.
And Kristen, I'll also just add, that when you live with these characters for such a long time, you come to love them. I mean, you're finished writing the book. I miss Sam Hell. I miss Sam Carlson, right? I miss Sarah Haber. And I think that's what we wanted readers to take away from this. Not putting the book down because it's harsh, but rather getting to that saying, man, I made two good friends. I wish I could read more about them. Because that's really what literature is about, right? Literature is about the reader falling in love with the characters, seeing the setting, and coming away from the book feeling good, feeling happy, feeling hopeful, feeling inspired. And I really think that's what we tried to capture. And I think these guys did a great job of letting the reader away with something positive.
I agree. I totally agree.
That's why Bob Dugoni was the right guy for this story, the right author. If you've read The Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell, he doesn't just
one of my favorites.
He doesn't just write good characters or great characters. He writes unforgettable characters. The manuscript we handed off to Bob, the readers, they liked Sam and Sarah. They liked them, but they didn't love them. We wanted readers to love them, and that's where Bob came in, because he's just expert at that kind of developing characters who readers love. I'm
going to agree with you there. One of my favorite books is The World Played Chess. and that is dealing with Vietnam. And my own dad was in Vietnam and experienced some horrific things. And so throughout the years, I've delved in and done the deep dive on Vietnam just to understand him, because he's a tough nut to crack. And Bob has done a fantastic job in the World Play Chess to get me to understand what happened to him. And see, I got them all up here too, Jeff. They're all up there, and then all the other Dugoni books are down the side. I was very obsessed for a while, and then the new one is over there on that shelf.
I mean, Bob's a one-man book of the month club. If you've got a monthly book club, we can practically supply you.
I know.
Go ahead, continue with that thought about your dad, if you would.
Yeah. So, what really struck me with this book is, even though the content is difficult, like, it wasn't burdensome for the reader either, and the story is important to tell. And I think Bob has a way of putting that human aspect in where you can't help but love those characters because you can relate to them in some sort of way. And there are still generations out there whose grandparents are still alive that were in World War II, who, we want to know about them and their service. And this book is one more way for us to understand what they experienced. And also, that generation is getting older, and some of them are no longer around. So, like, I can't talk to my grandmother anymore about her time as a wave. And so I pressed my dad last night. I'm like, okay, so I want to know everything, and even though I'm the genealogy buff, I hope that books like Hold Strong inspire people to go in and look at their family history some more too, because you can't help but love it and want to know more, even though it was tough. And it's important. I agree with you all about teaching our kids about it, to not forget what happened to them and to honor them,
Readers also have an opportunity to interact with the research itself. Jeff has set up an author's page, jefflangholz.com, where they can go to the rosters of these hell ships, and they have space to share their own stories or to investigate a little bit deeper. And in a big way, that was one of the impetus of the story as well, is that we did this research, and then we finished the book, and the book is published, but the stories aren't done yet. The stories, right. There's going to be multiple stories that come out of this. And so this is going to give other researchers and other writers and other storytellers the opportunity to get into finding out more about these phenomena.
Yeah, and I think it's wonderful the way you added the notes at the back for that transparency piece of it. I am that history person who wanted to look at the suggested reading, and then you have it broken down by page. So that's not often found in historical fiction. And there's times when I have then done a deep dive, and you're giving us a launching point for that. So I think readers who want to know more or want to know where it came from, what an incredible resource that you've provided readers for that too.
Thanks.
So I love.
If I could just we have over 470 endnotes at the end, and I just want to publicly thank our agent for lobbying to get those in there, and our publisher for agreeing to incur the extra cost to put those in there. And readers like you express gratitude that those notes are in there. We have a whole team to thank for that.
Yeah, I think more historical fiction novels that are really delving into as much of true story as they can should be putting those things in the back so we all can learn from it. So I hope that becomes more of a standard thing, because that's the first time I've really seen it broken down like that, and I loved that part of it. So what is next for all of you? What are some of the projects? Are we going to see more about this time in history? And as hard as the Hellship story is, there's so many like you said, so many stories to be told. So are we going to see more of that? And Jeff? Is Bob going to help you?
All right. Well, they're kind of looking at me. I have to say, I'm so obsessed with this topic that I do have 2 more projects involving 2 other of these prisoner transport ships, these Japanese hell ships. The one we just wrote about, the Arasan Maru, it left Manila in October. A few weeks earlier, there's another one called the Shinyo Maru. and that story needs to be told. And then a few weeks later, actually in December 1944, another ship left Manila, the Oryoku Maru, and I am deep into the research and writing for those two stories.
Nice. I can't wait to read them.
I'm gonna. I never thought I'd write 3 historical books, but now I've written 3 historical books. I'm gonna go back to Tracy Crosswhite. Will be coming out, the 12th book in that series. It's called The Dead Raw, and then the next Kira Dugan book will be out, and that's called Her Cold Justice. And I just met with my editors, and we just put together a game plan on where to go from there and what'll be next. So just more to come. This is what I do for a living. So, I don't know that I'll ever find another Hold Strong. I don't know if I'd find another Sam Hell, but sometimes blessings fall in your lap, and you just have to thank God and say, thank you for putting me in this path, and thank you for putting me in the path of Chris and Jeff and this beautiful story. And so, I'm open. We'll see what happens.
So on that note, I would love for you to share the story about passing the book along and then finding out there was another connection there, because I have heard this story and I think you should share it.
Well, just before Christmas, my wife and I lost a very good friend. He passed away of he had a lot of problems with his heart, and he died. And we went to his eulogy at the funeral home, and his mom was there, Carol, and I always gave Carol books for her library at her retirement community. And Carol said, I have to be honest, Bob, I don't read your mysteries because they scare me. And I said, well, Carol, don't worry, I have this other book for you. It's a World War II book. You'll love it. And she said, I can't read a World War II book. I said, why not? And she said, my dad died in World War II. And I said, oh, Carol, how did he die? And she said, well, we don't know the whole story, but he grew up in Ohio, and he was worried about being drafted, so he joined the National Guard. The National Guard was federalized by FDR, and he got sent to Fort Knox to train. He was in a tank division. His tank division was then sent to Tacoma, Washington. From Tacoma, they went to San Francisco. He transported over on the USS Calvin Coolidge. He landed in the Philippines. They got overrun by the Japanese. He was in prisoner of war. He was in the Bataan Death March in prisoner of war. And then we lost him. We don't know what happened to him. And I about fell over, because here this woman has just lost her son. And I'm going to tell her what happened to her husband, to her father. So I got on the email with Jeff, and I said, can you find her father? His name is Captain, and I forget his last name, but I gave Jeff the name, and Jeff said, yes, he was on this ship and he survived. And then he got put on a second transport and he died at sea. And there's a note that he was buried at sea. And I was able to tell Carol this story. So, in this truly horrific time in her life, when she loses a son, she found out what happened to her father. And I'm eternally grateful to Jeff to be able to provide that information to Carol. And it was a pretty special moment.
And that's when you know that there's bigger things at play for what you're supposed to be doing in this world, right? Because she needed that too. It's incredible.
No, I mean, I think all three of us will tell you that at some point you have to just give up. You have to give up control to God and let God guide you. And when you do, some really beautiful things can happen.
I agree. So, Chris, what about you for projects?
Oh, wow. I have a little sign on my desk in my classroom that says, here sits a teacher that loves to write, trying to become a writer that loves to teach. And I crossed out the trying to become and put and. And so I'm going to continue teaching. I have a blast interacting with the kids, reading stories with the kids, telling some of my own, and that sort of thing. I'm gonna do that until my retirement. And I can't say that Hold Strong will be the last story that comes out of me, but the the next one will probably be about a dog or something like that. I really don't know. I don't think that I'm ready to go back into the depth that I did with that we did with Hold Strong, but I'm not. Maybe I'm not one and done.
I have a feeling you're not either. So I just want to show you some comments in the chat because we do have a couple people in it. One, Megan is here. So she said, yay. And then one of our members, Nicole Rubin, she actually is part of our Fable group as well. And she just got the book. And so she was messaging me today and she was like, I'm not behind the 8 ball, right? I know you've read it, but it's okay. Like in the group, if I am just starting, and I'm like, of course, because I'm going to reread it along with you. I think it's worth rereading several times because there's so many details. So she said, I love how highly all three of you talk about each other. I love that too. You can tell that you admire each other and that you really are friends, which is fantastic. And then she said that she's grateful for authors who tell stories like this because historical fiction has opened her eyes to things she doesn't seem to grasp from a textbook. I agree with that as well.
I agree.
So, yeah. Well, thank you again, all three of you, and for coming on and talking to us about it. And I'm going to be, shouting it from the rooftops like I always do with books that I'm super passionate about, for everybody to go read it. And I really hope, Bob, that I can get my mom to go see you in Scottsdale next week.
Well, I hope so too. It'd be fun to see her.
Yeah, and then my dad can tell you about his father's time on the USS Anthony in the Pacific. So, because he was on the USS Anthony, and I'm sure he'll have a lot to say about it too. So,
Great.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate all three of you for telling the story. It's wonderful, and I hope that all of the people listening and watching truly enjoy it as much as I do. So, I hope to talk to you all again.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.